Hello, and welcome to this space. I go by Starspeed, and today I thought that I would do something a little bit different. Always trying new things on this channel, but in terms of doing something a little more casual and a lot more chatty and rambly than usual. This theme is a lot more loose. I've never done a quiz on my channel before. We'll see how this goes. I will, give a disclaimer now. This video is going to be extremely rambly. I'm going to go off the rails a little bit, like a bit. Talking about sorting, talking about my personal identity crisis regarding sorting, just like also generalizations about the houses, all kinds of things of that nature. Before we get into it though, I would like to sort of add a disclaimer that I know that J.K. Rowling is a little bit of a hot mess, but JKR notwithstanding, I really love this universe in that I sort of grew up with it, and with any media that you sort of grow up with and sort of thought about yourself through, almost, it's like a big part of who you are, even though you can also understand that there's problems with it, not only the author, but also even the text itself, loving something or having nostalgia with something. It does not mean that you don't have any reservations about it or criticisms about it. So I'm just putting it out there. Just because you like something or care about it doesn't mean that you endorse it fully. So anyway, that being said, I have thought about sorting a lot, as you will probably be able to tell. But we'll get into it. We will definitely be getting into it. So, where to start first? I feel like we should talk about how sorting often, I think, is thought of as a sort of personality test, or as a sort of litmus test for what kind of person you are. And I feel like this is such, it doesn't work. It just, sorting, I feel, in my opinion, is way more complicated than just your sort of external traits or how you like to do things. A lot of it has to do with your personal values, which can sometimes align with how you externally present yourself, whether it's fashion, how you talk to people, what things you try to prioritize in your life, how you go about doing things, how you, in the sense that what kinds of activities you prioritize, if you prioritize how you look, invest in things that you own, or invest more time in spending time with other people, and all of these sort of traits or external observable aspects of how people exist, I don't think is necessarily always correlates to a person's values, and doesn't always show up in the ways that how is this person actually trying to be, or in the case specifically of Hogwarts and being sorted into a house, what sort of environment will this person thrive the most in, will enjoy themselves the most in, will find people that either gel with them or cause them to grow more in, or grow in a way that they want to. I find that sometimes it makes the most sense for you to be in a space where this is not an environment that you've been cultivated in your whole life, or this environment or this sort of like personality that is attached to a certain environment or culture, as in the, like, I don't know, Gryffindor culture or Hufflepuff culture. It might not be the exact same in terms of this person is like a stereotypical Hufflepuff or Gryffindor or Slytherin or Ravenclaw, right? But they might find themselves growing the most in a house that doesn't reflect how they present themselves, right? I find that this is the case for me on some level, and so I'll be talking about that in a little bit. That all being said, let's sort of jump in, or like just get into this. Please bear with me. I have a lot of feelings about this. Okay, so in my case, I externally present, I feel like my sort of like outer shell that people sort of guess when in terms of like guessing my house. People tend to guess Slytherin or Ravenclaw the most. Obviously, depending on the context that I know this person or how they meet me, different parts of you are revealed to people in different ways, right? I guess I'll start with Slytherin in that I can be very reserved, or I don't want to say cold necessarily. I don't think that's an energy that I exude, but I can be a little bit more reserved. But I can also be very blunt when people are not in line, when people are being disrespectful, especially to other people. It's easier for me to stand up for other people than it is to stand up for myself, unfortunately. I really don't know what it is, in terms of how other people perceive me, but in terms of Slytherin qualities that I see in myself, I will sort of say right now that for the longest time, I sort of identified as a Slitherpuff. To some extent, I still identify with the houses that I identified with, but we'll see about that after we take the quiz. But anyway, the sort of Slytherin qualities that I see in me are the sort of ambition, the sort of not necessarily like cutting people or sort of like doing whatever it takes to get what you want. That's not ever something that I've seen in myself or feel compelled to do in any way, but being guided by ambition, being guided by, and also having been nurtured in a space where you have had very, very high expectations placed on you. And this sort of like developed into a complex for me on some level, which I don't see as a strength. So while I don't want to quell my own ambition, part of why I hesitate to fully identify as a Slytherin is because I know that even being in that house, in that space, would be incredibly bad for my mental health, incredibly bad for like my self-esteem. Not because I can't hack it necessarily, but having been in places that are highly competitive, I know my own experience. I know that even if I can do it, it doesn't mean that it's the most healthy for me. It doesn't mean that it's in alignment with how I'm trying to be or my true values or goals. So while there are lots of Slytherin traits in me that I admire and nurture, and then also some things that I see as not necessarily weaknesses, but things that don't help me be the best me, it's easy for me to make choices to cut out things or even people who are harmful to me. That sort of Slytherin self-preservation I don't think is inherently evil or bad. I think preserving boundaries and creating boundaries and honoring yourself are certainly things that anyone from any house or any alignment with anything could benefit from. I think it's important to know yourself. And I think that part of Slytherinness, as well as sort of like that sort of kinship with people who are also Slytherins, something that I find is very, like, that makes me really happy, and I understand that. But there are definitely lots of things about that house, not even going into the historical racism that is tied with the house, that I am uncomfortable with. Not to say that people who identify strongly as Slytherins are bad or wrong, or that people who identify strongly as Slytherins are inherently racist or something. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there are things about the house that I'm uncomfortable with and uncomfortable with identifying with. But at the same time, I do have like a strong affinity for and love Slytherin energy, and it's something that I definitely feel parts of myself in. Moving on. And then in terms of, I guess I'll sort of get Gryffindor out of the way. Not to sort of put Gryffindor and Slytherin first, because I think a lot of the times these two houses get way more attention than the other two houses. But I think because it's easiest for most people to sort of wrap their heads around these two houses, because there's a lot more about them, or it's a lot more talked about in general. But as for Gryffindor, I will also say that I've taken the official quiz 3 times. Gotten Hufflepuff first, then Slytherin, and then Ravenclaw. Okay? But on top of taking the official quiz 3 times in my life, I have also taken innumerable unofficial quizzes. When I tell you that this was an identity crisis moment, okay? In all of the sort of sorting quizzes that were available to take, I have been sorted into every single house. That being said, I more strongly identify with Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff, and I won't get into why right now. Gryffindor has always been a house that I never really identified with. No hate necessarily against Gryffindors or anything. I actually wanted to do this quiz because of a Gryffindor. Jingle Jangle ASMR, my dear friend, did a Pottermore quiz recently, and I was just so hyped that I really I needed to do this on my channel as well. So thanks to her for this video. But yeah, Gryffindor is just a house that I've never really gelled with or never really saw myself in, particularly because it's more characterized by being like a boisterous house, and for me, loud people are very, I can only handle so much at a certain time, and I need time to be away from that. So if I were to be sorted into Gryffindor, I would have problems, and I would have to always be somewhere else, and that's not, I would not want to put myself in a situation where I would always have to be away from people from my house just so that I could feel okay. There are certainly things about Gryffindor that I can see in myself on some level, in terms of that sort of humanitarian courage and courage to do what's right more than anything, but I don't know, in terms of like ostentatiousness and like the idea of glory, just like for the sake of it, it's never been something that I've aligned myself with at all. If you go to astrology, Leo is actually in my 12th house. So it's my house of shadows. So it's very much correlated on some level to like this energy of like wanting to not be that. But at the same time, Leo's in my Mars. Not to get into astrology too much on this sorting video, but that it's also like a house that drives me and my values, which is very interesting. But in any case, I'm not a Gryffindor. That's like the one thing in my entire time of like having this sort of like sorting identity crisis that ever like was very clear to me. Moving on to Ravenclaw and then Hufflepuff, I guess. So Ravenclaw is something that I really actually strongly identify with in terms of my sort of external ways of moving through the world, how I learn, how I study things, how I approach things, how I sort of like observe things, and I take a lot of time to like be absorbed in my interests. And it's, for me, Ravenclaw is not as it's painted sometimes, this sort of like arrogant, nerdy, overly self-interested house where, I don't know, people only care about academics. I think that academics can be part of it, but I think Ravenclaw for me is a lot more motivated by curiosity and motivated by this sort of fascination and like perseveration on topics and subjects that fascinate and excite you, things that sort of like explorative, experimental way of approaching life, approaching things that are interesting, whether it's academics, and it can feed a lot into academics, which is why I think that's played up a lot. But I don't think it's inherently motivated by studying or motivated by like achieving some certain elitist academic status. It's, for me, Ravenclaw is a lot more about this way of like being fascinated with continuously exploring something. And this is something that I feel so much. It's even like the way that I do ASMR, how I approach ASMR. It's very explorative and curious. I'm always doing new things on my channel, for example. So thank you for anyone who has been here on this journey and continues to stay here, because I realize that I think maybe for a lot of people are interested in, I don't want to say necessarily easy to grasp content, but like consistent content, in that you know what to expect. And I think that certainly there's something beautiful about being able to continuously come back to a channel and have a very specific niche or genre, right? I think that's really beautiful and awesome. At this point in time for my channel though, my niche is I don't want to say it's non-existent. I just want to make the weird things that I want to make, the ASMR that I want to make, even looks that I do for my channel, also off my channel. But my makeup today, as you can see, is probably not like the most out there that I've done at all, or that people have seen. But if you are familiar at all with my channel, if you just like scroll through really quick, you'll be able to see lots and lots of really out there looks. And that's just because I love doing art on my face. It's so fun for me. And I like exploring things in that way. So that sort of Ravenclaw mode of doing things is something that I feel can be identified, I think, by other people in the ways that I move in this world, or the ways that I do things, or the kind of art that I make, or the kind of ASMR that I make, or even like the fact that I make ASMR and the sort of way that I do it, right? But at the same time, as I sort of mentioned, it's similar with Slytherin in that this house is similar with Slytherin in the way that I feel that because of the way that I've like sort of grown up and the sort of expectations that were put on me, being in a place where people are highly regarded, like no matter like how people are personally like moving priorities in life, or like whether their academic standing is like the most important to them, Ravenclaw just like being the house that is seen as like the most studious, and people have a lot of accolades because academia is very important to them. It would be an environment that would not be the most suitable for me, because even though I can operate in that way, and I'm not saying that there aren't Ravenclaws that flunk through their classes because other things are way more important to them, because there definitely are, but that just being in that environment, I think, would put a lot of unnecessary pressure on me to compare myself or feel like I'm not doing my best, just simply because I'm in an environment where people are like continuously pursuing like their one thing that they are into, or if there are people in my sort of house that are just like way up there and in terms of academic status, and that in and of itself would, I don't know, it would make things a little bit difficult for me, I think, which is why I most strongly identify with and would want the most for myself to be placed in Hufflepuff, which for a lot of people I think is understandable, but on some level some people think is not, you know, it's not it, you know, it's not like, why would you want to be there? They don't see me gelling exactly with how they sort of paint Hufflepuff in their heads. But allow me to explain. I find that in terms of values, that sort of community building that Hufflepuff does, that's not just, while I, like, again, really, 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 really respect Slytherin, for the longest time, I identified as like sort of split between Slytherin and Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff has this sort of community building that is different than like Slytherin's just like sort of looking out for one another. It's more of a like collaborative, let's work together, let's how do we build this thing? How do we work on this project together? How do we continuously build supportive, sustainable networks that reach across and to one another? That sort of like community harmony, and whether it's caring for magical plants, or like just building and working on cultivating community and caring for one another, I think in terms of my personal values, like that's so key to what I'm trying to do, like in the world, like in the actual world, like what I'm trying to do. And that sort of like humanitarian welfare and caring about like the general like environment of like where people are, and like wanting to elevate and make things better for absolutely everyone, actual goals. Like, those are actual goals for me, you know? Not to say that the other houses are not capable of that, but in terms of like that sort of like alignment and that sort of being the guiding principle of Hufflepuff, like dedication, diligence, hard work. It's not just like hard work for no reason. It's not like, or that's the sort of like, honestly, like the way that people paint Hufflepuff is like, why do you, like, that sort of like, why do you need to work hard if, like, if you're talented you don't need to work hard kind of thing. It's like, why not put our talents and work on them to collaborate and build things for, like, to make everything better for everyone. Yeah, that's I think that's everything for me. I think for me, getting away from elitism is a really big and necessary, like, thing that I want to work through and get people to get through too. So Hufflepuff is just one of those, like this house, always, not always. When I first was sorted into Hufflepuff, I was angry because I didn't understand how, like, amazing the house was. I didn't understand houses and sorting the way that I do now. A lot of people might just be like listening to this thinking like, Starspeed, why do you think about this so much? I don't know, okay? I don't know. I could not tell you. But we are here now, and this is what has happened. So I don't know what you want from me. That being said, though, I have no idea what I will get as the result from my Pottermore quiz. I really don't know. I have not remembered the questions. It's been a long time since I've taken the quiz. So we'll have to see about that. But without further ado, we'll get into it, you know. That was actually a lot of ado. That was like 30 minutes of ado. But, you know, hey. Alright, first thing we're going to do is create our Pottermore account. Now, there are a couple quizzes that you can take. Joining your Hogwarts house, discovering your Patronus, wand ceremony. Let me know if you would like to see me do the other quizzes. But for today, we're just going to be taking the sorting ceremony quiz. And okay, first question, forest or river? This is a little bit difficult. I don't know what they're trying to get at. I like rivers, that's for sure. I also like forests. Rivers are in forests though, so I feel like maybe forest. Kind of got multiple things going on. Okay, next one. Which of the following do you find more difficult to deal with? Hunger? Cold? Okay, loneliness? Boredom? Being ignored? Okay. This is a little difficult. Not hunger. Cold is unpleasant, but loneliness too. I don't mind being alone. Boredom, though, true boredom is hard to come by. It's very hard for me to be bored, but being ignored when you're trying to get something done, or when you're trying to communicate something, maybe that one. I guess I would have to go with being ignored. True boredom is really quite difficult for me. I hate being bored, but it's also difficult for me to be bored. So maybe being ignored. I guess. I don't know. This one's a little bit difficult. Alright, next question. Once every century, the
flutterby bush produces flowers that adapt their scent to attract the unwary. If it lured you, it would smell of a crackling log fire. Cozy. Oh, that one's good. The sea. Fresh parchment. That's my favorite. Home. I'm a little bit torn between fresh parchment and a crackling log fire, actually. But I think I gotta go with fresh parchment. Alright, you and two friends need to cross a bridge guarded by a river troll who insists on fighting one of you before he will let all of you pass. Do you attempt to confuse the troll into letting all three of you pass without fighting? Tempting. Suggest drawing lots to decide which of you will fight. That doesn't sound right. Suggest that all three of you should fight without telling the troll. Maybe. Volunteer to fight. That depends on my capabilities at that point in time. I think I would attempt to confuse the troll into letting all three of us pass without fighting. Okay, on to this one. If you could have any power, which would you choose? The power to read minds. This one is already quite tempting. Let's see. The power of invisibility is alright. The power of superhuman strength, no. Power to speak to animals, that would be quite good, actually. The power to change the past. That one's quite problematic, as we have seen in probably every time travel film ever. So, the power to change your appearance at will. Actually, I feel this one is probably better than invisibility, and I would have to choose it for gender euphoria reasons. I think this one's it. Given the choice, would you rather invent a potion that would guarantee you love? Well, no, I'm of the opinion that love should come from trust and respect, so no. Glory, also no. Wisdom, no. Power, maybe. Wisdom, see, I don't believe that love should come from a potion. I really don't. I feel like that should be earned. Glory as well. Wisdom should come from your work, but power might be helpful in terms of if you need it as a sort of tool. I don't know what they're trying to get at here, but I think for me, it would make most sense to have power as a potion that you could use as a tool. If you were attending Hogwarts, which pet would you choose to take with you? Tabby cat. I do love cats, but let's see what we have in terms of options here. Owls. Owl. Brown owls. Let's see. Common toad, natterjack toad, dragon toad. Well, we should check through the rest first before we make any hasty decisions. Harlequin toad, three-toed, tree-toad. Well, I think it's got to be an owl for me. The owls are the pet that I'm most drawn to. But which one? Most torn between tawny and barn owl. But I think it's gotta be barn owl for me. They're the most beautiful to me. So left or right? Left, easy. Well, there you have it. Starspeed Starspeed is a Ravenclaw.
Okay, so there you have it. Yeah, I'm Ravenclaw, as this quiz has sort of confirmed after all of that sort of rambling earlier that I did about how Ravenclaw is like the sort of way that I move in the world and how I approach things. And I guess it's very easy to notice, or it's something that comes out the most. And it makes sense that it does. I'm not mad about it. I really am not mad about it. Again, though, like that being said, I feel like my Ravenclaw traits and like personality stuff, or the way that I prioritize things almost, is relevant and necessary to understanding, I guess, like who I am, but at the same time, in terms of what kind of place that I would want to be the most, rather than how I sort of operate, if that makes sense. Sometimes you don't need to put like things in the same box, if that makes sense. Is that making sense? I feel like the way that I do things is certainly important and vital to me, and how I do anything that I do, right? But I think that the place that I would grow the most would not be in the house that sort of like categorizes or is almost like symptomatic of the way that I do things. I don't know if that's making sense, or if I've just been incredibly redundant this entire time, but hopefully you get the point. And with all that said, this video is probably gonna end up like extremely long, but thank you for being here and listening through. If you have made it to this point, if you're still awake, bless you for your patience. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out and watching. I hope this was interesting to someone. And yeah, as usual, Starspeed.